Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on chapter 126. Chapter 126. No betrothal ceremony took place, and Natasha's engagement to Bokonski was not announced. Prince Andrew insisted on that. He said that as he was responsible for the delay, he ought to bear the whole burden of it, that he had given his word and bound himself forever, but that he did not wish to bind Natasha and gave her perfect freedom. If after 6 months she felt that she did not love him, she would have full right to reject him. Naturally, neither Natasha nor her parents wished to hear of this, but Prince Andrew was firm. He came every day to the Rostovs, but did not behave to Natasha as an affianced lover. He did not use the familiar thou, but said you to her, and kissed only her hand. After their engagement, quite different, intimate, and natural relations sprang up between them. It was as if they had not known each other till now. Both liked to recall how they had regarded each other, when as yet they were nothing to one another. They felt themselves now quite different beings. Then they were artificial, now natural and sincere. At first the family felt some constraint in intercourse with Prince Andrew. He seemed a man from another world, and for a long time Natasha trained the family to get used to him, proudly assuring them all that he only appeared to be different, but was really just like all of them, and that she was not afraid of him, and no one else should be either. After a few days they grew accustomed to him, and without restraint in his presence pursued their usual way of life, in which he took his part. He could talk about rural economy with the Count, fashions with the Countess and Natasha, and about albums and fancy work with Sonia. Sometimes the household, both among themselves and in his presence, expressed their wonder at how it had all happened, and at the evident omens there had been of it. Prince Andrew's coming to Otradano, and their coming to Petersburg, and the likeness between Natasha and Prince Andrew which the nurse had noticed on his first visit, and Andrew's encounter with Nicholas in 1805, and many other incidents betokening that it had to be. In the house, that poetic dullness and quiet reigned which always accompanies the presence of a betrothed couple. Often when all sitting together, everyone kept silent. Sometimes the others would get up and go away, and the couple, left alone, still remained silent. They rarely spoke of their future life. Prince Andrew was afraid and ashamed to speak of it. Natasha shared this, as she did all her feelings, which she constantly divined. Once she began questioning him about his son. Prince Andrew blushed, as he often did now. Natasha particularly liked it in him, and said that his son would not live with them. "Why not?" asked Natasha in a frightened tone. "I cannot take him away from his grandfather, and besides—" "How I should have loved him," said Natasha, immediately guessing his thought. "But I know you wish to avoid any pretext for finding fault with us." Sometimes the old Count would come up, kiss Prince Andrew, and ask his advice about Petya's education or Nicholas's service. The old Countess sighed as she looked at them. Sonia was always getting frightened lest she should be in the way, and tried to find excuses for leaving them alone, even when they did not wish it. When Prince Andrew spoke, he could tell a story very well. Natasha listened to him with pride. When she spoke, she noticed with fear and joy that he gazed attentively and scrutinizingly at her. She asked herself in perplexity, "What does he look for in me? He's trying to discover something by that looking. What if what he seeks in me is not there?" Sometimes she fell into one of the mad, merry moods characteristic of her, and they should particularly love to hear and see how Prince Andrew laughed. He seldom laughed, but when he did, he abandoned himself entirely to his laughter, and after such a laugh she always felt nearer to him. Natasha would have been completely happy if the thought of the separation awaiting her and drawing near her had not terrified her, just as the mere thought of it made him turn pale and cold. On the eve of his departure from Petersburg, Prince Andrew brought with him Pierre, who had not been to the Rostovs once since the ball. Pierre seemed disconcerted and embarrassed. He was talking to the Countess, and Natasha sat down beside a little chess table with Sonia, thereby inviting Prince Andrew to come too. He did so. "You have known Bezukhov a long time?" he asked. "Do you like him?" "Yes, he's a dear, but very absurd." And as usual, when speaking of Pierre, she began to tell anecdotes of his absent-mindedness, some of which had even been invented about him. "Do you know I have entrusted him with our secret? I have known him from childhood. He has a heart of gold. I beg you, Natalie," Prince Andrew said with sudden seriousness, "I am going away, and heaven knows what may happen. You may cease to... All right, I know I'm not to say that. Only this, then. Whatever may happen to you when I am not here..." "What could happen?" "Whatever trouble may come," Prince Andrew continued, "I beg you, Mademoiselle Sophie, whatever may happen, to turn to him alone for help and advice. He is a most absent-minded fellow, and an absurd one too, but he has a heart of gold." Neither her father, nor her mother, nor Sonia, nor Prince Andrew himself could have foreseen how the separation from her lover would act on Natasha. Flushed and agitated, she went about the house all that day, dry-eyed, occupied with the most trivial matters, as if not understanding what awaited her. She did not even cry when, on taking leave, he kissed her hand for the last time. "Don't go," she said in a tone that made him wonder whether he really ought to stay, and which he remembered long afterward. Nor did she cry when he was gone, but for several days she sat in her room dry-eyed, taking no interest in anything, and only saying now and then, why did he go away?" But a fortnight after his departure, to the surprise of those around her, she recovered from her mental sickness, just as suddenly, and became her old self again, but with a sudden change in her moral physiognomy, as a child gets up after a long illness, with a changed expression on his face. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 126. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 126. A Test of Character. Today's chapter marks the first days of Prince Andrew and Natasha's betrothal, and, less happily, the initial days also of their imposed premarital one-year separation. They spend this time together at the Rostovs getting to know each other better. It's nice. Though for our purposes, the most important aspect of this chapter is what is unwritten. It's what we're not told that emerges as the most important part of this most pivotal of chapters. We speak, of course, about the idea of role-playing. The idea is that life provides for each individual certain roles, say, for instance, fatherhood, brotherhood, or friendship, and each individual can either dutifully perform their roles or perform them poorly. The one-year separation is a major plot point in the novel, so it may be of use to see how it relates to the roles of some characters it involves. Starting with the Old Prince Bokonski, we can say with near certainty that he fails to perform his role of father virtuously. Sure, he listed his reasons for why he insists that his son refrain from marrying for 1 year. We're also told, however, that these reasons are born not of a desire to do well by his son, but rather for entirely selfish reasons. The old man simply doesn't want any changes in his own life. The happiness and well-being of his son doesn't even enter into his calculations. This is not the behavior of a dutiful father. This is the behavior of a man concerned only with his own well-being, needs, and interests. Contrast this with Natasha and Prince Andrew's response. It's clear neither of them are going to enjoy 1 year of separation from each other. Really, they spent the last few chapters positively gushing over one another. But they endure anyway. Prince Andrew's response in particular is interesting for a few reasons. The first reason is that he decides to honor his father's selfish interdiction in the first place. Andrew could very well have ignored his father, but, dutiful son that he is, he chooses to act virtuously and obey his father's command. This action preserves the harmony, or whatever closest approaches harmony in the Bokonski home, of his family. Secondly, and probably most importantly, he seems to have accepted this impediment as an opportunity for growth. He sees it as a challenge. Andrew tells Natasha that during the course of the year he will behave toward her as a man engaged should behave. He places no such obligations on her, however. She is free to do as she pleases. This separation will provide a test of both their characters. Their acceptance of this challenge takes courage. We'll see how they do. Daily Meditation. In one respect, man is the nearest thing to me, so far as I must do good to men and endure them. But so far as some men make themselves obstacles to my proper acts, man becomes to me one of those things which are indifferent, no less than the sun or wind or a wild beast. Now it is true that these may impede my action, but they are no impediments to my affects and my disposition, which have the power of acting conditionally and changing. For the mind converts and changes every hindrance to its activity into an aid. And so that which is a hindrance is made a furtherance to an act, and that which is an obstacle on the road helps us on this road. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. All right, so that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 126 of War and Peace. I hope you liked it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 127. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.